What's going on, guys? Welcome back to this week's episode of Outside the Arena with Rob and Griff. I'm Griffin Senek, joined by my co-host, Rob Goldberger, and we're back once again for another episode of Outside the Arena. Not too much, to be honest, has gone on in sports. Last night at UFC 272, we saw Colby Covington defeat Jorge Masvidal in a unanimous decision. The NBA, restarted the regular season. Still going strong. We'll keep talking about that here and there. And then once we get to the playoffs, there'll be some more coverage. The NFL today, we're going to be doing our first mock draft of the year, which is very exciting. The combine was this week. A lot of very interesting things happened there. And then, but first off, we are going to real quickly just touch on the MLB and the impending lockout. They could not agree to a deal last weekend. Just an absolute disaster, it seems, at this point. Two sides that just are unwilling to compromise and just seem like there's no room in the middle. Rob, what do you think of this just absolute disaster that's continuing to unfold for baseball?
Yeah, I mean, it's just an absolute disaster. And at this point, I wouldn't be surprised to just have the whole season, most of the season wrapped up into this. I mean, I was expecting this. You were expecting this to be done a month ago, maybe. I think this is just, like you said, I mean, the worst part is it seems like these two sides couldn't be further from an agreement. They haven't made any progress. I mean, I'm just it sucks, and it sucks that we're the ones that are punished as a result of it, because I think there are a lot of people who are involved with baseball who don't actually enjoy the game of baseball as long as they're seeing profit. And I think a lot of teams' products on the field each year. The Pittsburgh Pirates. That's the example I keep going back to. But I mean, there's an example of people high up in baseball who don't care about a baseball team, and the results show on the field. And I think that's what you're getting, behind the scenes in these negotiations. And I think for a lot of these people, it's all about profits. And I think obviously it's a business, and I understand it has to become number one. But the simple matter of the fact is that each of these teams has shown enough growth to meet the demands of the players. It has, profit-wise. Mathematically, I mean, it sucks that this is the case, but I think this is the byproduct of a system that has allowed people who don't care about baseball to become far too powerful within it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you say it pretty well. I mean, there's just these teams right now that just refuse to spend money, and that's the case. I mean, if this was 30 Steve Cohens or Steinbrenners or all of that,
Sure. Yeah.
This wouldn't have been a problem, obviously, because those teams all love spending money, and they don't want the CBT, the tax and whatnot, to be something super low and so aggressive, which I think is ridiculous, to be honest, with the way baseball is structured. It's embarrassing for the sport. This is the time of the year, to be honest, when the NBA's in the regular season. It's kind of a dull period as it approaches the playoffs. NHL's going. NFL's wrapped up, and this is the time for baseball to potentially bring in some viewership, because it's a good time for them, and it's a good time to start the season. And it's just an absolute disaster. Rob Manfred has to be removed immediately. I mean, I don't know the process for getting him removed or whatnot, but I mean, this man is destroying the game of baseball in so many different ways, with all the rule changes he's proposing, with all the things he's doing with this lockout. I mean, you see him laughing at the press conference. It's honestly disgusting that this man is the commissioner of Major League Baseball. It's honestly a disgrace. I mean, it's upsetting, because it's crazy to think that people bash Roger Goodell, but Roger Goodell at the end of the day is a fantastic commissioner. Honestly, after what I've seen through the whole COVID and now seeing Rob Manfred, I mean, Roger Goodell would not have had
compared to this,
any
certainly.
of this happen.
Compared to this, certainly. I mean, this is. And that's the other aspect of it is you really touched on is, Major League Baseball, people will say, you did forget about a key important aspect of this. People will say, we don't care. We'll go watch the tournament. And then as soon as the tournament's over, we can go watch the playoffs. Yeah. And then by the time we know it, NFL training camps rolling back around. Like, people will learn to live without baseball. And Major League Baseball owners have to understand this. And I think we're at a very, very dangerous crossroads right now, because this is a bad look for baseball. And it looks like the people, how can we as a sport bring more people to the game if the people who run the game don't even give a shit about it? And I think that's the ultimate, that's the ultimate question right now.
Yeah, it's frustrating. I mean, and pick and choose sides. I mean, I think the MLB side is clearly the worst, and no, I don't like them. I'm not with them, but the players have room to improve too. This is not they're not
Right.
perfect here. They're not putting perfect offers on the table. These two sides. I mean, I find it ridiculous that everyone's saying, "Oh, we want baseball," and they haven't really been negotiating since what, Tuesday, Monday. Like, what are you doing? They should
Well,
be
it's
in a
also
room
the fact
locked. They should be
it's also
locked
the
in a room and not able to come out
yeah, agreed.
until the season or until they reach an agreement. I mean, what they're meeting today, but what I mean, they haven't met all week. I mean, if you do a meeting once a week, we're not playing baseball this year. At the end of the day, it's just not going to happen. And
Oh,
the meetings every day. It took until this deadline for them to even start meeting. Really, I mean, there was no progress throughout the whole week. I mean, it's just embarrassing, honestly. And I don't know when we're going to see baseball. I really don't. I don't want to say I think a month's going to be canceled, but probably. I mean, I just don't see any way that baseball this agreement's going to come to terms, especially with the way they're meeting. I mean, these two sides need to start. I mean, today I'm sure this is going to how the meeting's going to go. They'll meet for an hour and a half or so probably, and they'll just break up because they just can't agree, and they're just so stubborn. Both of these sides. It's just embarrassing.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think also the fact, a lot of baseball fans question why these meetings weren't even happening until,
It took them
very
2 months to even start meeting. Two, three
a few
months.
weeks until the deadline. And it's a good question. I mean, I think I think you made a good point in that you're really not going to see this happen in any other of the major leagues at this point because they're far too advanced. Their CBAs. I think even if they had a class in the CBA like this, I just think it's like not only have you bring up. I just want to bring up another point about the players too. It's more so that I feel like I don't know. It's hard for people to almost get behind them because when and I think it's a good tool that these owners have. I believe because it's they're the public faces of everything. Like the owners are sort of in the background. Like they're the public faces. And when you see Max Scherzer pulling up in this Porsche, it's oh, look at this D-bag. Like look at him. He's just trying to get more money. But I think
Which
it,
that's the whole thing with that was ridiculous.
it was
That was
ridiculous, right? But I'm just saying, it's one of those tactics that I'll say other stuff, but mostly the owners will employ to sort of slander the players. I think it's just it's this is what we're playing with at this point. It's 5-year-olds. I mean, it's a joke, and it's I think also a lot of baseball fans aren't realizing what exactly is being argued over here for, and how minuscule it turns out to be when it's split across these 30 teams. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
it's an absolute disaster. To be honest, we probably won't talk about baseball on this podcast until this thing gets agreed to at this point. I think this is probably it for the near future unless they reach an agreement. So, yeah, I mean, we've talked about it a little bit. We've tried to do some free agency stuff, but at this point, who knows when this thing's going to start. So I wouldn't expect to hear much more MLB talk. But with that, we'll go to dominant league. I mean, this would never happen in the NFL. We saw even with COVID, they refused to cancel a game. Just absolute insanity that was. But the NFL, and we're going to introduce going off that tough topic and frustrating discussion. We're going to go to our first mock draft of the year. So we've kind of got different setups. I've got a PowerPoint type deal. Rob's got kind of a simulator type deal that he's going to be able to work with. And we're going to go 3 picks at a time, kind of talk it through. And yeah, I'm curious to see what Rob thinks for his mock draft, and I'm sure vice versa. So do you want to start, or you want me to go for the first 3 picks?
I'll start here, I guess.
Okay.
So let me share my screen real quick. So with the first overall pick for the Jacksonville Jaguars, I'm gonna go with a little bit of surprise here, and I'm gonna go with Ike Mekwonu. And I think he's gonna end up being drafted first. And then I have another surprise pick for you. Do you know who I'm going with, Griff? I think you might have an idea. Do you know who I'm going with?
Oh wow.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Malik Willis at number 2 overall, for the for the Detroit Lions. And then I'm going to take Aidan Hutchinson for the Houston Texans here. Oh, sorry. Did not mean to do that. I will fix that. But yeah, I clicked on, those are my top three.
Those are your top three.
Kwanu,
Okay.
Willis, and Hutchinson. Ignore the other two. Sorry.
Okay. I will pull up mine now, and then we'll kind of talk through our first three and whatnot. So, there we go. First pick, Jacksonville Jaguars. Offensive tackle, I think, is just their biggest need at the moment. I think they could use an edge rusher. I don't think they're going to take an edge rusher, though. I'm going to go with Evan Neal. I think he is, I think there's a lot of hype right now surrounding Ikem Ekwonu, and rightfully so. He's a fantastic player, had a great combine, looks fantastic. I think he's going to be a superstar. I just think Evan Neal is a really quality tackle. You can, put him at left tackle, you play him at right tackle. Gives you some flexibility. I mean, you see this guy, he's, 330 pounds, and, he looks, his physique is just out of this world. I think he's a superstar who, went against the top competition in the world, succeeded against the top competition in the world. I think that plays a factor. I think the Jaguars will get Trevor Lawrence, his franchise left tackle, franchise right tackle, wherever they decide to play. I'm assuming left tackle, but an absolute superstar. Evan Neal, he'll be. My next team, the Detroit Lions, as you can see, quarterback for me is their top need. But I just don't see them picking a quarterback at number 2 here. I guess my connection's a little unstable, so I don't know if you can hear me, but I think we should be good. But I'm going to go. I guess I'm not. There we go. Aidan Hutchinson, defensive end out of Michigan. The Detroit or Michigan, I should say, connections, I think are going to play a part into this. I think, teams always love drafting players that their fan base already kind of loves from their college days. I think Detroit just is desperate for an edge rusher. This team, that Jeff Okudah pick at the moment is really hurting them and whatnot in terms of, it really has not worked out for them. A very unfortunate situation. He's been very banged up. Hopefully he's healthy this year, but Aidan Hutchinson gives them their superstar defensive end. And, I think Malik Willis is a very interesting player. I think he's a good player. I think he will be, not to spoil my pick, but, for me, he's my first quarterback off the board. I think that will be the case. I just feel like at the number 2 pick with some of these premier elite skill position players, I just think Detroit is in that spot where they're not quite ready. I mean, Malik Willis, I feel like I just don't see them ready for a quarterback with that offense right now. I feel like they just want to build kind of the surrounding team and then at the right moment go for the quarterback, which might be next year. Next year's quarterback class is stacked. So I can see this team putting it off and trying to land one of CJ Stroud or Bryce Young, because those two guys, those will be the two first selections in next year's draft.
And let me add, I think a trade down and selection of Malik Willis is also possible for the Lions.
Yeah.
But I don't know, Griff. I think he's going to be one of those prospects where that hype continually just blooms and blooms and blooms and blooms to the point where if the Lions do trade down, if the Lions wait, they might not be able to get him. It happens, maybe not the 2 best examples of whom Malik Willis wants to turn into in the NFL, but something similar sort of happened with Carson Wentz and Jared Goff, where they weren't viewed too highly, months coming into the draft. And then sort of as time got closer, they were viewed as sort of the consensus top 2 picks. So, we'll see.
We will see. This draft, we also should say we didn't do trades and whatnot in this one. So obviously that could look very different. All right. And third overall, the Houston Texans. For me, I think edge rusher is their biggest need. So I'm going to go with the former number 1 consensus overall pick, Kayvon Thibodeaux. Stock has dipped a little bit, but this should still be a top 5 pick in this draft. He is an excellent player, phenomenal athlete. And I think Houston is very much in need of an edge rusher. I think Thibodeaux is a guy I hope somehow falls to the Jets. I think he would be a superstar in Robert Saleh's defense, but I think Houston, this is a home run pick for them, especially, they might go with the, Ekwonu here. That was, I was having a tough time deciding between those two. But they do have Laramie Tunsil, and, I think Thibodeaux fills the bigger need for them at the moment. So that's my top 3. I guess I'll just go into my next 3 and then we can kind of rotate like that. So my next pick is the New York Jets. The Jets, 2 top 10 picks. So it's going to be very interesting to see what they do. Cornerback, I think, is a huge need for them. Tight end too, outside linebacker, safety, with Marcus May being a free agent. So Kyle Hamilton, I think, is a lot of people's pick here. I think a lot of people think Kyle Hamilton's going to be that guy. I don't think the Jets can pass up the chance to draft Ikem Ekwonu, though. And I know I probably botched his name there, but we're rolling with it. I think like you, this guy has the chance to be the number 1 overall pick. I was, deciding between him and Evan Neal for that slot. I think these guys are neck and neck. And I think for the Jets, right tackle is a spot where they've got, some guys that are going to be free agents, I believe, with like Morgan Moses and George Fan. I mean, those guys are not really that good. I think the Jets here, I think Kyle Hamilton's a really tempting pick, but I mean, just building that O-line and building what could be, one of the best O-lines, best young O-lines in the league for Zach Wilson, I think it's just something the Jets could really use. And with 2 top 10 picks, I feel like they can afford here to take an offensive tackle. And I believe they have 2 second rounders as well. So this team has the ability to kind of go tackle here and then, pick some skill position players. So I think Ekwonu is too good for the Jets to pass up at this pick. There's my pick. But New York Giants, quarterback for me is their biggest need. I stick with that. Daniel Jones, just an absolute disaster. But as I kind of went ahead there. Charles Cross for me is going to be the pick. I think this team needs to address the offensive line desperately. Charles Cross, is the 3rd best tackle in my mind in the class. He's going to be a great player. And I think, tackle's a spot right now where some of these top teams really need. So I think he's going to go number 5 to the Giants. I think he's going to be a good player. I think the Giants would love the chance to get any one of those top 4 players, I think would be amazing. So if Kyle Hamilton can go to the Jets, I think that, any of those previous 4 guys, the Giants would be thrilled with. But Charles Cross, I think, is going to be a great player. And then at number 6, Carolina, the best 3 tackles are off the board. I think that's their biggest need. So, brings an interesting situation. And I'm actually going to go with Kyle Hamilton here. I think, this is a situation where the Panthers are just going to take the best player on the board. I think Kyle Hamilton's a defensive superstar. I know they picked a corner last year, 1st round. So just building that young secondary, I think the Panthers, they have some holes on that offense. I'm sure they'd like to go tackle here. But I think just not reaching, taking the best overall player who has the chance to be potentially one of the better players coming out of this draft class, could become one of the best safeties in the NFL very quickly. So Kyle Hamilton, I think, would be a great pick for the Panthers. Just a case of, I think, you got to take the best player on the board at this point. And, they do have a safety's a spot. They do have I believe it's Jeremy Chin there, but, Kyle Hamilton will fit right in and I think adds another superstar to that Carolina defense. So, yeah.
All right. So I'll share mine now. Make sure. I think you have to stop sharing first, Griff, though.
Okay.
All right. There you go. All right. You got me?
Yeah.
All right. So at number 4, I'm actually going to pretty much do a reverse, and I'm going to take Evan Neal in the spot where you took Gardner and vice versa. And then I'm also going to go with Charles Cross here at 5, just like you did. And then I got to tell you, I got the Panthers making a surprise pick. I really do. Where is he? Sorry. I'm seeing the Panthers taking Kenny Pickett at 6.
Wow.
I'm seeing your quarterbacks going to the top 6. So yeah. Do you want me to go to 9 now?
Yeah. I mean, if you want to talk through any of those, what do you think?
I just think I'll say the reason for a couple things first. I think there's definitely going to be a Thibodeaux drop, even though I think he's the best prospect in the draft personally. I think there's going to be a drop. I think he's going to be one of those players that inexplicably drops. You've heard a lot about it already, about character concerns, this and that. You hear it starting early every year. I think Fields was that guy who took the inexplicable drop this year, and I think it'll be Thibodeaux last year, and I think it'll be Thibodeaux this year. And then, like I said, it's a QB league, and teams will draft QBs. And I think, especially in the case of the Panthers, Matt Rule needs to figure it out this year, or he's gone. He's done in Carolina, because quite frankly, I was expecting a lot out of Matt Rule's tenure. Former Temple guy, turned the turn the program around, turned Baylor around, and he's been a disaster in Carolina thus far. I mean, Joe Brady was supposed to be, one of the up and coming young minds in the game, fired. I mean, it's, I think he needs to make a big move, and I think Kenny Pickett is going to be that big move. I'm sure that'll change as I get less confident, but it certainly wouldn't surprise me. And so I'm actually going to wait till here to select Kayvon Thibodeaux for the New York Giants, which would be an absolute home run for them to walk away with both Cross and Thibodeaux in the top 7. So we know that the Falcons last year went with a corner, or a couple years ago, went with AJ Terrell in the first round, and he's been a home run pick so far. And I think they're going to continue adding that defensive depth because boy, do they need it. And they're not going to pass up the chance to get the guy who I think is the second best prospect in this draft behind Thibodeaux, actually, and Kyle Hamilton. And then, with the Denver Broncos, I think they would maybe like to get a QB here if their free agency doesn't work out, but my guess is they'll have a veteran quarterback by this time. And they need an edge rusher. And I'm going to go, it might be, some people think this is a little high for him, but I'm going to go with Jermaine Johnson out of Florida State. I think he's an unbelievable player, and I think he's an unbelievable prospect. And that Georgia D-line, man, was so good. He got kicked off of that Georgia D-line, and he had to transfer to Florida State, which is pretty crazy. But I think, the Broncos have seen that recipe for success with Von Miller and Bradley Chubb. I think they're going to go back to it. And I think what they're going to do is they're going to stick to their philosophy, what they've done the past couple of years. I would say, take one of these corners, probably the best defensive player available, but they're not drafting corners in back-to-back rounds. So they're going to take the best defensive player available. By that time, my guess is that they have, their hope is to have Aaron Rodgers on the team. But if not, I would really not be surprised if one of those, other veterans is a Denver Bronco by the draft. So, yeah.
Interesting. All right. Let me pull mine back up.
I thought I'd go a little bold for mock draft 1.0, Griff.
Yeah, I like it. All right. Next pick for me, this New York Giants. And I'm going to go for a bit of a surprise pick here. I'm going to go for Devin Lloyd out of Utah. I think the New York Giants are in need of some help at linebacker. I think it's a weak spot. Blake Martinez coming off, I believe it was a torn ACL. So they need some help here. I think Devin Lloyd kind of fills that hole. He was a great player for Utah this year, really led that defense. This could be a little high for him. I know people kind of have mixed feelings on him. Some people think he's a top 10 prospect. Some people think he's, in the 20 range, in the, 15s to 20 range. But I think he's a great player. And I think, at this pick, New York Giants, this is a new era. This isn't the Dave Gettleman era. So maybe I shouldn't say they go for, a bit of a weird pick. If this was Dave Gettleman, this might be Drake London. But Devin Lloyd, I think, is a great defensive player and gives the New York Giants, a defensive leader there. For the Atlanta Falcons, this is a very interesting spot for them. I kind of was all over the place in terms of where I thought they would go. But I ultimately landed on David Ojabo, the edge rusher out of Michigan. I think this team is – I think Ojabo, after watching him play this year, I think this guy is just a freak. I think he's one of the better edge rushers in this league. And that Atlanta Falcons team is in need of an edge rusher here. I think, if one of those top 3 tackles that, I already had going to other teams was available here, I think that'd be their pick. I think that's a huge need for them. But I think this team, I think they're just going to try and build on the line. Matt Ryan, I think they could pick a quarterback here, but with Matt Ryan, with that huge cap hit, I just don't see it quite yet. I think they're another team that's kind of waiting it out. And I think they'll take Ojabo, who's a, premier edge rusher, in my opinion. And then the Denver Broncos, I agree with you in that I think this team wants a veteran quarterback. I don't think they're going to draft one of these quarterbacks here. But unlike you, I think they're going to do kind of something that you wouldn't expect. And I think they are going to take Ahmad Sauce Gardner, the cornerback out of Cincinnati. I think this kid is truly sensational. You look at the college stats. I believe he didn't allow a touchdown, didn't allow more than 13 yards or something like that in the game. This kid is truly, truly special. And I think Denver Broncos, you pair this guy with Patrick Surtain and that secondary with Justin Simmons. This is just an absolute nightmare. So, if Denver, let's say they don't trade their first round pick, they end up with a quality quarterback. That offense is pretty solid. They could use an edge rusher. That's kind of what I was, I agree with you in that. That's definitely a spot of need. I could easily see them going Jermaine Johnson, a guy like that here. But I don't know. I feel like that second cornerback spot, they got some veterans. I feel like adding Gardner here would be huge for them. And the New York Jets is, I'll go to my next 3. I think the Jets' top need is cornerback, and I don't think you can pass up Derek Stingley here out of LSU. This is a guy who missed a lot of games this year. I believe he only played in 3 games this year or something like that. Really had a good freshman year, but since then it's kind of been a not so good. But because of that freshman year, he's still considered top 10 talent. I think he's has got a very bright future potentially in the league. And I think the Jets desperately need a cornerback. I think if they can come into this draft, solidifying that O-line, I think they really need an edge rusher. But here, I think Stingley is just the better player, and I think addresses the bigger hole. So I'm going to go Derek Stingley to the Jets. And here is the Washington Commanders, which I think is a very interesting spot. And this is where I have Malik Willis going just outside the top 10. As we get closer, as we start to do trades, Malik Willis for me will most likely be probably in the top 5, top 7 of picks. But without trades right now, I just don't see any of those teams really picking a quarterback in this spot. I think Washington, I think they're in the market for a quarterback, but this team, I think, is more than happy to go with the Malik Willis here. I think it's a good pick for them. He appears to be the top quarterback, so I'm going to go with him here. And then lastly, Minnesota. They're in a very weird spot. I think, they could really use a guard, but this draft for guards is really not too good. They could use an edge rusher here, but cornerback, I think this team would really be hoping for one of Gardner or Stingley. So I'm going to go, in my opinion, what might be a little bit of a reach here and give them Andrew Booth Jr. out of Clemson. I think he's a quality cornerback. I think this is just a team that really needs a cornerback. I know it's kind of a questionable pick. This is probably a spot for them where I would see them trading back if this was the board for them in this spot. But I don't know. I'm going to go with Booth Jr. here. Give them a cornerback, a bit of an interesting pick, but the Vikings are just in such an odd spot because they'll be in the playoffs some years, but then they'll just miss the playoffs and not really have a good enough pick to make a difference. So just another weird year for them. So yeah, that's my next 3 in the draft.
All right. So here we go. Sorry, fellas. All right. So
apparently, according to Peter Schrager, Sauce Gardner interviewed incredibly well this week and is now being discussed as the top overall player in the draft.
That can't be. He's not going as the top overall player in the draft.
He won't go number 1, but he could go maybe top 5, top 6, top 7.
I think he'll probably be a top 10 player, which thank you for leading me right to my next point. I'm going to go with Sauce Gardner with the New York Jet to be a New York Jet. Personally, actually, I'll get to this a little later. And then right off the back of that, I'm actually going to go with Kenyon Green here for the Washington football team. They need an offense. They need an interior lineman badly. Obviously, we know Brandon Sheriff is leaving, and I know a lot of people like Tyler Linderbaum here, but there's been a lot of reporting that Washington likes Kenyon Green a lot, and I really wouldn't be surprised if this is their pick. And I think this is the dream scenario for the Minnesota Vikings. They're going to scoop up Derek Stingley at 12. And personally, I think Derek Stingley is maybe the best secondary prospect in this draft outside of Kyle Hamilton. I'm sorry. I love Sauce Gardner just as much as the next guy. I really do. But I think Derek Stingley, I don't think the big question with him obviously is whether he can stay healthy, because whenever he's on the field, he's elite. But these last 2 years outside of his freshman year, he hasn't been able to stay on the field. He's been hurt, but I think the upside with him is just it's unbelievable. I mean, this guy was locking down the best in the SEC one-on-one as a freshman. I think the LSU, he's such a difference maker to me, because there's such a difference when the LSU defense when he was and wasn't on the field. I mean, it's ridiculous. People wouldn't throw at this guy. And so I'm going with Derek Stingley here. Yeah. And so for the Cleveland Browns here, I'm going to go actually with Devin Lloyd out of Utah. I don't know. I don't see him making it past this point, and I think the Browns. I'm very interested to get your take on the Browns, because I'm a little perplexed by what the Browns should do. I think they're a little bit at a crossroads as a franchise. I mean, I don't know how happy you would be with a linebacker as a first round pick here, but yeah. Then I'm gonna go onto the Baltimore Ravens here. And I'm actually going to take Trevon Walker from Georgia, who has tested out of his mind at the combine. The Ravens need an edge rusher badly. They need an edge rusher, almost more than any team in the league besides my team, who you can see is coming up next. And I think Trevon Walker is one of the best in the draft. I think the Ravens he's been mocked to the Ravens a lot. And I think if he will fall to them, which I believe he will, I think this will 100% be their pick here. And so Philadelphia Eagles at pick 15, I think the selection is going to be Nakobe Dean. And I would love this pick if I were the Eagles. We needed a linebacker for years. I think he's the best one in the draft. I think he's an absolute heat-seeking missile of a player. And I think he's an Eagle. What can I say? I think he's an Eagle.
Interesting.
So funny enough, I'm going to go with a pick that I know a lot of Eagles fans aren't going to like. And I'm going to take Chris Olave at 16. I just think if we are going to choose to truly build around Jalen Hurts, I really hope we don't. I don't think we're going to build around him, but I wouldn't be surprised to give him another year. Just give him as much talent as possible, I guess. Like, see what he's got if you're going to do that, if you're going to really buy in on him. And we need another wide receiver desperately. We'll go for one in free agency, but considering we have 3 first-round picks and we have agency like that, you got to take Chris Olave there. I mean, I think he's the best receiver in the draft personally. And I think he'll be an Eagle if he lasts to pick 16.
All right. So with that, I will share my screen, and I guess I'll just finish my draft, and then you'll go for yours. So,
Yeah.
There's the pick. But Cleveland Browns, this is the team that's going to pick a wide receiver here. I don't even think it's a secret, this thing. I think this is the worst kept secret in the NFL right now, is that the Cleveland Browns are selecting a wide receiver at pick 13. This is their biggest need by far. They've got some young guys, but this team, Jarvis Landry, there's talk that, you saw the tweets, he might be out of there. This team needs a wide receiver, and I'm giving them Drake London, who I think is, viewed as the top receiver in the class. I think the Ohio State receivers and him, I think they're all very good, but I think Drake London is, someone who really would change the offense here. He gives you, that deep threat, that aggressive player who, will score touchdowns, do it all. I think it's a great pick for Cleveland. I think Cleveland's in an ideal spot to land the top wide receiver. I think this is a perfect scenario for the Browns. They get that superstar receiver to pair with Baker Mayfield. And, it's a great year for the Browns to be drafting wide receiver just because of how the draft's going to go. Like last year, to get one of those top 3 guys, they all went, right, or I guess a little bit before, but some of them went even earlier. Jamar Chase, who, I agree is better than Drake London, but the wide receivers are going to go a little bit later in the first round here than last year. Baltimore, I agree with you. This team could definitely use an edge here, but I'm going to pick Jordan Davis. I just think Jordan Davis would just be such a freak in Baltimore. And, his combine this week was fantastic as well. He ran, a 4.77 or something like that in the 40-yard dash. Just insane. So I think Jordan Davis, as good as guys like Trevon Walker are, and as much as they might need an edge rusher, I feel like they'll somehow finagle their way to get some edge rushers in free agency. I think D-tackle Jordan Davis, I mean, this is just someone on that defense who just is going to completely change the run game for opposing teams just because of how big and strong he is. And lastly, your Philadelphia Eagles for number 15. I have them going Garrett Wilson here. I think Garrett Wilson, I personally think he's better than Chris Olave. I just think he's, a bit more talented. They both ran, basically the same 40-yard dash and whatnot. I think Wilson's just a superstar waiting to burst. And I think Philadelphia, with one of these 3 first-round picks, if they get the chance, they have to take one of these wide receivers because at the end of the day, you have Devonta Smith, but outside of him, there's no real talent at that position, if we're being honest. I mean, Arcega-Whiteside and, Rager are just complete busts. You've got guys like Quez Watkins and whatnot, but, come on now. Like, if this team seriously wants to compete, they need to use one of these picks. And I think this is an ideal scenario. If you can get Garrett Wilson as the Philadelphia Eagles at 15, I mean, just what a home run pick that would be. Number 16 for the Eagles. I actually don't even remember. Oh, I think I remember who I put here. And yeah, I'm going to go Jermaine Johnson. This is a team that needs an edge rusher. I know you put him, I believe, at number 9. So,
Number 9,
I mean,
yeah.
this would be an ideal scenario if he can get down to here for Philadelphia. I think he's a superstar, like you said, was forced out of Georgia. Pretty funny. But this kid is legit. And I think Philadelphia's got to go and get a defensive edge. They've got to get some sort of edge rusher. This was a team that I believe it was like 31st. They were 31st in sacks or something like that. Yeah.
They're going edge
I mean,
in the first round this year, 100%.
Yeah. I think edge and wide receiver are two positions at Philadelphia. I mean, I think Philadelphia fans are a little worried about because of all the first round receivers this team has taken in recent years.
Yeah.
But with one of these picks, I mean, if Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Drake London's there, even Treylon Burks maybe. And Treylon Burks kind of gets into the sketchy range. I feel like of like he reminds me of like a little bit of like the Rager or Arcega Whiteside kind of vibes. Like I get those vibes.
Little unknown, getting a little hyped up before the draft. And I got you.
I think stay away from. Look, they went for the safe guy last year. They took the Heisman winner and it worked. That he looks great.
Exactly.
Stay
keep
with
keep drafting although Treylon Burks is an SEC guy. To be fair to him, I mean he is an SEC guy.
We'll see though. A little sketchy, but I'm gonna pick the Chargers here. This is an interesting spot, and I am making this pick off of the fact that I believe Mike Williams will leave in free agency, setting up a big void at wide receiver. So I'm going to have the Chargers take Chris Olave here. Chris Olave, Keenan Allen duo for Justin Herbert would just be fantastic. I think ultimately if the Chargers can use that Mike Williams money that they would have to pay him on some other areas and can draft Olave, this is, the best use of their pick here. I really like this. I think Chris Olave is a superstar. And I think this is kind of the region where these wide receivers are going to start kind of going quick and fast. I think we're going to see some of these later teams, really start to take these wide receivers. There's a lot of good guys in this draft at wide receiver. Treylon Burks, like we said, probably might be the next guy off after this. I know we only went to the next pick. But yeah, and with that, New Orleans Saints, I'm going Kenny Pickett. I think most likely these quarterbacks will start going beforehand. This is just the first mock, kind of what I was initially thinking. But the Saints, I mean, we'll see what happens with Jameis Winston in free agency. It's kind of hard to say what will happen there. Taysom Hill, obviously, I believe is a free agent too. So this is a huge need for them, I think. And I think for this team, I mean, this is a team that's, has cap issues galore. I think they just need to accept that, it's time to just kind of reset a little bit, get a rookie quarterback on a rookie contract, try and, save some money here and there and not, commit, because Jameis Winston's going to command decent money per year. If they can get Kenny Pickett here, I think that's the way to go for them. So yeah, that will conclude my top 18. And you want to finish out I believe you have two more picks, right?
Yeah, I do. Although I got a little fucked up, Griff. I'm sorry. My thing got a little messed up, and I'm still trying to get it back. But I know who my last two picks are. At 17 for the Chargers, I'm gonna end up going with Jordan Davis there. For the Carolina Panthers, and at 18 for the New Orleans Saints, I'm gonna end up going with Matt Corral at 18. And that's going to cap off my thing. I'll be able to get it back up in a second to show you my comprehensive thing, but yeah.
Very interesting. Neither of us had Tyler Linderbaum.
I think
it's tough. He's a center. It's a tough spot.
I know. And I had a different, I had, what's his name? Sorry, Jesus. Kenyon George, I had him, or Kenyon Green rather. I think there's a significant chance he gets drafted over Linderbaum, Griff. And I think it's interesting. I really wasn't expecting until I sat down and did it. I wasn't expecting to have 3 QBs in my top 18 because what you've heard, but it's the quarterback position. It'll always be valued. You'll always hear about it. And I think the Saints are definitely going quarterback this year. And I'll touch into that. I think the Jordan Davis fit, the Chargers will be ecstatic if he gets to 17. He is the perfect fit for them. The absolute perfect fit. I think there's a slim chance he actually gets to 17 just because, things aren't going to work out how I said in my mock draft I'm playing over. I think the Chargers will end up taking Jordan Davis if he is there 1,000,000%.
All right. Well, that does it for our first mock drafts. I'm sure they will change very much. So we'll start kind of doing trades and whatnot in the coming ones. I mean, I think the draft is late April or so.
Yeah.
So we'll probably do another one in 2 weeks or so, I would say. And then, once we get closer and closer, it'll become a weekly thing with the draft. Obviously, NFL free agency, I believe, also starts in a few weeks, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, as soon as that happens, that will significantly also alter our mock drafts, obviously filling out team needs and whatnot. So we'll see what happens. But with that will do it for this week's episode of Outside the Arena. Thank you guys so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed. the mock drafts. I think it's one of the more fun things that, around draft season, doing these. I think I have a really fun time with it. I had a fun time last year, and, it's going to be fun this year once again. If you haven't already, please like, comment, and subscribe. Check us out on Apple Podcasts and Spotify at Outside the Arena. And that will do it for this week's episode of Outside the Arena. And we'll see you all next time.